All right. Again, thank you all for coming today. My name is Jenny Paxson. I'm from the Webster Public Library. This is our panel presentation on uh, from the Diverse Abilities Dialogues on Financial Planning. We have a great series of different panels. You can find them all on our YouTube channel. Next month is on communication, and we'll have a bunch of different speech and language people attending and on different like resources for that. Uh, and I'm very lucky to do these panel presentations, as I said, with Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County and Autism Up. And I'll let Britt say a little bit about herself before we get started on the panel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brittany Jensick. I am a mom to 21 children, 14 of whom have intellectual, developmental, and medical disabilities. I also am the president of Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County, which is an advocacy organization to support families with children with developmental delays and disabilities, kind of navigate those early challenges of seeking evaluations and receiving diagnoses and then putting supports in place. We love doing these diverse abilities dialogues because these are all of the questions that our organization gets asked all day, every day. So despite the fact that I have children with, I have a special needs trust in place and I also have ABLE accounts in place, I have a million questions and I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say.
Awesome. So usually we start these panels with our very first question, which is, who are you and what does your organization do for the community? And we can start with Lori, because you're the first person I could see right here.
Sure. Thank you, Jenny. So this is Lori Schaller. I'm an employee of National Disability Institute, the parent organization of ABLE National Resource Center, and we provide financial education services across the United States for families, financial counselors, service providers, helping people to achieve financial wellness. Thank you, Jenny.
James.
My name is James Traylor, and we have two organizations. We have Rivant Partners and Rivant Partners Disability Planning. So the Rivant Partners Disability Planning side helps families understand all of the available benefits and services, predominantly in New York, both on the federal and state side, and how to maximize them through the lens of a financial advisor. How to structure things from a legal standpoint before they go meet with their attorney, how to structure things financially, not in the sense of stocks and bonds, but if you're going to support your child with independent housing, how much rent could they afford? How could they pay for utilities? Can they, if they're underemployed or unemployed, what do they do for supplemental income, et cetera? And then what is the long-term plan after parents are gone? So some of our clients are adult siblings, banks, trust companies, et cetera. And so we work with about 600 families across the state of New York. The other side of our business is simply the financial planning side, where we are managing trust investment accounts, managing investment accounts for families that happen to also have a child with a disability.
Rick.
Good morning. My name is Rick Marchese. I'm a partner at Woods Obie Gilman, chairperson of our elder law special needs practice. I'm also honored and lucky this year to be the chairperson of the New York State Bar Association Elder Law and Special Needs section. As an attorney in our practice group, we do a lot of legal planning for families who have adult disabled children. That ranges from the creation of trust, advising on government benefits, SSI, SSD, looking at ABLE accounts as an option, guardianship, and the number one issue, which unfortunately legally we can't help out a lot with right now, is housing, which is the number one issue for all families. This is the Governor Hochul stated that the state is at an inflection point in terms of the state's ability to deliver quality services with dignity to young people of the state, and we're following closely what's happening at the federal and state level with respect to Medicaid funds and I'm here basically to give advice if I can with respect to planning. Legal planning is just one part of the picture, but I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really pleased to see the number of people who are interested in planning. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, if you could.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone, and thank you guys, Jenny and Britt, for having us. Delighted to be here. I'm Sarah Grimes. I work with NYSARC Trust Services. We are a private nonprofit organization that provides and manages special needs trusts for residents of New York State. Any area of New York. We primarily focus in helping people protect money that they may have in their own name that could put them at risk of losing benefits, so windfalls of money, Medicaid spend downs, and also helping families that want to plan for the future of their loved one, ensuring that people with disabilities have more money available to them above and beyond what government benefits provide to support those quality of life expenses, housing needs, and things that are not provided by those government benefits. So our mission and our goal is to improve the lives of people with disabilities by protecting their means-tested government benefits and having funds available to improve their lives.
And Marcia?
Yes, my name is Marcia Sweet. I'm with the Center for Disability Rights, which is one of 35 independent living centers in New York State, non-residential. They provide advocacy, independent living skills, benefits advisement. They have a trade loan closet full of equipment for all ages and all different types of disabilities. They also can provide information on the CD Pass program, and they also can provide interpreter services. Our supplemental needs pooled trust covers all of New York State, and I've been doing this for over 40 years.
So one of my first questions was, what's the difference between a pooled trust and a trust? So a lot of you deal with trusts, so I don't know which one wants to start. Maybe Marcia, you could start with what a pooled trust is.
Yeah. So we're a supplemental needs trust, but we're also a supplemental needs pooled trust, because in New York State, once an individual with a trust reaches age 65, they must be in a pooled trust. So we made ourselves a pooled trust right from the beginning, so individuals could join us and not have to jump into us at age 65. I have individuals every week coming in saying, I need to sign up for the pooled trust because it's their 65th birthday. And according to New York State, they have to trade over to a pooled trust. Then we have other individuals from birth to death that just stay right with us.
The other primary difference is that a pooled trust must be managed by a nonprofit organization, where a special needs trust can be drafted by an attorney and it could be managed by the trustee that you choose, which could be a family member, it could be a professional organization like a bank or a trust company. And as Marcia mentioned, the pooled trust is specifically for a person that's over 65 when you're depositing your own money. So you cannot make additions to a special needs trust after the age of 65 of your own money. But that would not necessarily be the case for someone when you're third party planning as a family for someone who's over 65.
And just one point of clarity is if the individual has excess income above $1,800, if they are under that, they may not need to be making ongoing contributions to a pool trust. So just want to clarify, not everyone needs to enroll at 65, just if you have what's called a Medicaid spend down.
Right, and that the Medicaid level tends to increase every year. We don't know what it's going to be next year, but New York is very generous in its income level. And I don't really have much more to say to add because I think it was excellent so far. The pool trust is actually under federal law, in New York State follows federal law with respect to that.
So just for people who don't know, what is a Medicaid spend down? Because, some of us have children who are under 21, so I'm not quite sure about what that is at this point yet. Could you explain that?
So in New York State, there's many different ways an individual can be receiving Medicaid benefits. One of which is they could be categorically eligible because they're on SSI. So under federal law, anyone on SSI is automatically enrolled in Medicaid. That person would not have a Medicaid spend down. Another cohort of individuals are those that need Medicaid for long-term care supports, typically the 1115 home and community-based services waiver, so OPWD eligibility, or perhaps CDPAP services, and they're exempt from mandatory MLTC enrollment, which is managed long-term care. So sorry, this is technical. Those individuals are subject to both an income and a resource limitation in terms of how much money they can have every month and how much money they can have in the bank. Spend downs are situations where someone has excess income. They're not enrolled in the Medicaid buy-in program through New York. And so they have excess income above and beyond what New York State deems they're allowed to have. That excess income can be deposited into either a self-settled supplemental needs trust, something that is funded with the individual's own assets prior to age 65, but after age 65, it must be deposited into a pooled supplemental needs trust if you want to maintain your Medicaid eligibility. So someone who has income that is unearned, that is under $1,800, or is SSI eligible, or simply has no income but needs Medicaid for purposes of adult-based services or services through OPWD, would not have a spend down. The spend down would only be if someone has income that's, again, over 1,800, is not working, or is over 1,800 and over 65.
Yeah, it's typically for somebody on SSD, Social Security Disability, because that typically is going to be a lot higher than the SSI level. So somebody, you have to be certified disabled to join either a self-settled supplemental needs trust or a pooled trust, and that would be a certification through Social Security, and that you have a disability, which would be Social Security disability benefits. And you can, as a young adult, if you have a disability certification before age 26, James, you can correct me on that. And
22.
22, thank you. Then you can get a disability. You can get disability benefits if either of your parents are retired and collecting benefits, or one of them has passed away. So that and if you can have Social Security disability and still work and collect Social Security disability benefits as long as your earnings are under a certain level. So it's basically for those people who are in that situation. And the spend down, as James indicated, is your Medicaid level over $1,800 that would go to a pooled, it can go to a pooled trust.
Sounds very complicated. So
Well, yeah.
well, just wondering, how do you actually, like, for somebody who's not quite there yet, like, when is the appropriate time to start planning for your loved one's future? And like, what would be your recommendations to, like, how do you get started with this? What is your, like, what is the, like, what are those questions that people are asking? Like, what's the first thing, like, the big question that people ask you?
Well, I think you start out with, I mean, if a child is under 18, they're being cared for by their parents if they have a developmental disability. Everything's kind of going fine because they're in a Medicaid waiver program. The waiver refers to the fact that the child is eligible for Medicaid without imputing any of the parents' resources or income to the Medicaid level. So they're basically on Medicaid, and the waiver refers to the fact that their parents' income and assets are not counted for Medicaid purposes. Once the child turns 18, all bets are off in terms of that. And that is the inflection point, so to speak, when the rules of the game are changed. So typically we're seeing parents whose child is approaching 18, and the first issue is whether a guardianship is needed, because when you turn 18 under New York State law, you can make your own decisions, and your parents are no longer legally responsible for making those financial decisions or medical decisions. You're your own person. So is a guardianship needed, which is a proceeding in court to have a parent named as the property management or personal guardian or both of the child, or there is an alternative called supported decision making that's relatively new in New York State as an alternative to guardianship that does not involve a court proceeding, or is if you have a highly functioning autistic individual, for example, who can make decisions, you can have that child sign a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. So the spectrum of cognitive functioning is very wide, and it has to be, that decision has to be tailored to the client, his or herself. And after that, decisions could be made about discussing with the parents whether it would be wise to fund a trust or join the NYSARC trust. I'm a big fan of the NYSARC trust. They're aces and work all over the state. Or, you know, whether they should, if there's a need to join a pooled trust, we can discuss that at that time as well. But the first issue is guardianship. Usually the second issue that comes up is housing, and that's clearly a more difficult issue to address at this time with the limited resources that the state has right now. I'll defer to the others at this point.
Anyone
From
have
my
a question?
from
Oh,
my
go ahead.
perspective, Jenny, there's different phases of when you need to do planning. So when a child is young, you're typically entering the early intervention system, of which Rick could probably give us a dissertation on early intervention. As the child is older, we find points of transition are really important to do planning. So Rick was indicating 18. 18's important because under both the Social Security program, SSI, but also the Medicaid program, the individual is deemed a household of one. So you can pursue benefits if that is appropriate and the individual, would be eligible. 21, 22, depending on birth date, is often when someone that may be under an IEP or special education services, maybe exiting the school district. That's another very, very important age because you need to be coming up with what is the plan for when we're exiting, that system into the world of adult-based supports and services. And then any other major change. So death of a parent, loss of healthcare through a parent, moving. There's a variety of these events that kind of prompt families to do planning. Those are the big ones from my perspective.
One that may not be as common is also, a divorce situation for somebody that may be receiving SSI even under the age of 18. Sometimes that can affect SSI eligibility when a spouse starts to receive alimony or other child support payments are directed to that child. And so that's another kind of life event that might be a good time to reach out to a planner about potentially some special needs trust support that can resolve those issues and reinstate SSI.
That's a great point, Sarah. And for people on the call that are impacted by divorce, child support is deemed asset or an income of the child, not the parent. And that's a huge deal because that income could impact either SSI or Medicaid eligibility. So it's often a time where you need a family court judge to order child support to be paid into either a self-settled trust that someone like Rick drafts or a pooled trust through Marcia or Sarah. And now in New York, child support can go to age 26 if you have a child with a disability. That's a change, and it's creating some interactions between systems and perhaps some of these pooled trusts at a much earlier age than say 65. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Go ahead, Rick.
No, I was going to say that's a great point. And, caring for a severely disabled child puts a lot of stress on parents, and often that unfortunately will result in a split or a divorce. And those are very difficult issues to deal with in terms of beyond the financial issues, custody, care, who's going to take care of the child, what are the responsibilities going forward. So that gets into an entirely more complicated territory.
So this is Lori. I'd like to add to Social Security Administration has clarified that court-ordered child support to be directly deposited into an ABLE account is not countable income for that individual. So that's another option along
Yeah,
with the trust.
people have options in those situations. The biggest challenge we see is that the divorce attorneys have no idea about this world. And so, connecting that divorce attorney with a qualified elder law attorney to help with that or with a special needs trust we often have to actually speak to the court and explain to that particular court the process because it is totally outside of their wheelhouse.
Great.
Can I ask just a really, so we get asked this all the time. Can somebody give us just like like I'm not even quite sure what kind of the easiest possible way to explain what an able account is, what a special needs trust is, what a pooled trust is. And then the other question I had was, do you have to wait until I'm in the process of guardianship for one of my kids, so I've kind of already done this, but we frequently get asked if you have to wait until the child is 18 to apply for SSI, to apply for guardianship. Can you start the process a few months before? Is there a hard cut deadline for applying for any of these things? So I have two totally separate questions, but those are things we get asked all the time.
So I'll give the definition of an able account. So a person who has a disability that began before age 46 is eligible for an able account. So an infant born with a disability, the parents can open an able account right then and there for their infant. An able account is always opened in the name of the person who has the disability. And family, friends, a special needs trust. If funds are saved in a qualified tuition plan, a 529 qualified tuition plan, those funds can be directly deposited into an ABLE account. And that is not countable income for that individual. And so today, anyone who has a disability that began before age 26, it doesn't mean that they've ever received disability benefits, right? We know many people have a disability, never receive a disability benefit, perhaps are never eligible for Medicaid benefits. They are still ABLE eligible and they can open their account today. ABLE accounts are opened online for the most part. And most states offer ABLE plans. There are like 49 plans to choose from nationally. And at our website, we offer comparison tools so that individuals can compare the different plans available. New York State ABLE plan is very, very nice. Anyone who has a disability that began after age 26 but before age 46, if they are not receiving SSI or SSDI now, they can take a disability certification to their doctor, ask their doctor to sign off that their disability began before age 46, and on January 1st, 2026, they may open an ABLE account in their name. So we find this is very helpful, like for a low-income family whose child has a significant disability and that child needs to qualify for SSI. Even parents are restricted how much income and resources they can have in that circumstance. So we've seen parents open that ABLE account in their infant's name, save extra money, and then to be able to address that housing issue that everybody's talked about today, they can purchase a home that infant will be raised in with the infant's ABLE dollars. Two, the parents can use that ABLE account fund to purchase any vehicle that child will be transported in, as well as other family members. So the categories for allowable expenses, qualified disability expenses, these are broad categories. It pretty much covers most expenses. We did ask the IRS, are vacation expenses okay? They said no, not unless the person needs a support person to accompany them, let's say to Europe. Or if it is disability specific vacation, like they're going to engage in people and places, that would be a qualified disability expense. So we urge people if they want to use their ABLE account for that, they can't save the monies perhaps outside of the ABLE account, to ask for a script from the physician indicating that that is a qualified disability expense.
Are there limits to the contributions that can be made or to the people that can make the contributions?
So anyone can contribute money directly into an ABLE account, and most of the ABLE accounts have electronic feature that the person's account number is not compromised, but the person can make a direct deposit into that ABLE account. And an employer's contribution to an ABLE account is still countable compensation for that individual, and it would be taxed. There's all kinds of advocacy around that. We're hoping that that can be changed in the near future. So the limit for this year is $19,000 from all combined sources total. So we know for many people, maybe they get an insurance award or something that's often much more than $19,000. So ABLE works very well with trust, with pooled trusts. So we have comparison tools and information on the ABLE National Resource Center regarding how those two or three options can all work together well. We know that many people who have a disability are working to their fullest ability, making use of the Social Security Administration work supports. And so if they do not have deposits made to an employer-sponsored retirement plan this calendar year, they may deposit extra money up to their employment earnings or up to an additional $15,060 into their ABLE account too. So pretty soon, people are approaching like $100,000 in savings. So we're hoping that people who have a disability who are working know that it is important that regardless of their earnings, they file income taxes. Because an individual who receives SSI now by working may eventually become eligible for SSDI on their own work record. And then that SSDI is not a means tested benefit program. And that prevents then they're needing to apply for SSDI or being forced if they are still an adult who receives SSI, even though they maybe have not resided with their parents for decades. That when a parent passes away or retires, that SSI beneficiary is forced to take SSDI based upon a parent's work record. And it can impact parental retirement benefits.
So just to build on your question, Britt, so from a planning perspective, we see ABLE accounts as being a tool for someone who's either saving their own resources, someone has a 529 college savings plan where maybe the child's no longer going to college and we're doing a qualified rollover from like to like account. We see self-settled or first-party supplemental needs trusts being tools that are often reactive, either because someone came into money or is turning age 65 as a child support or more situation where there's money placed in the child's name, but they can't manage the money themselves the second it goes into the trust versus an ABLE account, they are the owner. And a third party trust funded by a parent, grandparent, loved one, et cetera, in our world is often the primary support vehicle after parents pass, which will replace the parent financially. So everything from housing to transportation to supplemental staff. A major difference from our perspective is ABLE accounts are not typically estate planning vehicles. They're more active accumulation vehicles, whereas trusts can take and receive more complicated assets. Let me qualify. Privately drafted trusts can take more complicated assets such as real estate, interest in business, life insurance proceeds, marketable securities. Typically, pooled trusts are only taking cash, has been my experience. I don't want to misspeak, Marcia and Sarah, if you're taking real estate or equities, but our experience has been it's typically cash. So they all play their slightly unique roles. One other point, your second question, prior to a child turning 18, parental income and resources are deemed available for that child. So your question, when do you start an SSI application? You cannot start it, depending on your financial situation, prior to the child turning 18. And technically, the month they turn 18, if it's before the 14th, Social Security sometimes gets confused. So you have to expressly state that it'll be on the child's own financial circumstances, but based on their income and assets. So prior to 18, parental income and assets are considered. After 18, it's just the child's income and assets, even if they reside within your household. So they are deemed for Social Security purposes to be a household of one within your household, which is confusing. Doesn't make sense, but that's just how the system was designed.
Yeah, I was going to, thanks, James, for saying that, because I always view there's an ABLE account, a self-settled trust, a third-party trust, and they're all part of planning. They're little blocks that you can use to build upon. 18 is the inflection point for reasons I stated before. That's when a guardianship may or may not be needed, and that's when, as James said, the child becomes a household of one, and the SSI would kick in at that point. For guardianship purposes, I usually will advise clients to start thinking about that when the child turns 17, because there has to be some ramp up. A full guardianship is a court proceeding, and it typically is going to take 4 to 6 months for that from start to finish to get. It's called a letters of guardianship from the court, granting the parent full authority to act on the child's behalf. So between 17 and 18, things start ramping up. The other thing to remember about an ABLE account or a self-settled trust is that Medicaid has the remainder interest in those trusts, so that if a child passes away with a great amount of money in a self-settled trust, self-settled means it's coming from the child's own money, or in an ABLE account, that the state of New York will get those monies for the amount of Medicaid benefits provided to the child during the child's lifetime. I'm a big fan of a third-party trust, a living third-party trust. Third-party trust means it's funded by typically the parents of the child after the child turns 18. Again, the child is now separate, individual, kind of separated from the parents legally, so the parents can fund a third-party trust because they are deemed a third party, or a trust could be funded and started by a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, or friend. I always view these trusts as like a GoFundMe page where relatives can contribute to the trust for the benefit of the disabled child, and the parents typically can be the trustees and then use the funds every year for the benefit of the child without interrupting SSI or Medicaid benefits. And at the end of the year, parents can then write a letter to those who've contributed to the trust saying, thank you very much. Because of your contribution, we were able to buy, adaptive equipment, a handicapped accessible van, whatever, for the child. And unlike a self-settled or an ABLE account, New York State does not have the remainder interest in those trusts. And when the child passes away, the parents can direct, if they funded or created the trust, where the remainder interest would go. The other thing is, with a third-party trust, the other reason I like it is that you can get word out to relatives, hey, if you want to benefit Bobby, the disabled child, in your estate plan, don't leave money to Bobby himself, because that's going to throw him off SSI and Medicaid benefits. Leave it to the trust that we've established. In that way, those monies would be protected and used for Bobby going forward.
What would, I mean, this is an incredibly naive question, but what would make anybody choose a self-funded trust over a third-party trust if we know the excess funds are going to be sucked up by Medicaid in the end?
It's a matter of where the funds are coming from. So self-settled, and you would say, well, in my example, let's say Bobby, the disabled child, why would he have funds? Well, it could be that he's received an inheritance. That's the problem, where you don't get word out to relatives, don't leave money to Bobby. Or Bobby's in a car accident, or he gets hit by a car, and now there's a tort settlement. That's his own money. It can't go into a third party trust. He has to form his own trust with those monies. And that's the distinction. But you're right. Why would anybody do that? It has to do with the source of funds.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting.
If I could add a comment too about Medicaid payback. So upon the death of an ABLE account owner, right, if they have a sibling who also has a disability, funds can be transferred to that sibling, right, in full, and it doesn't count towards the annual contribution limit. And for that ABLE account owner, outstanding qualified disability expenses, including funeral and burial, are first paid. And many states have taken steps to limit Medicaid payback for residents of the state that select their state plan. Now, New York State has not moved forward with those steps yet, but we understand a lot of advocacy is taking place. But an ABLE account can help a person who maybe wants to qualify for SSI but is over-resourced. They can deposit their own monies, the family monies, into that ABLE account, and then they can apply at age 18 for SSI if they have a disability and they're unable to work and earn above a certain threshold, given all the accommodations that are considered. And an SSI beneficiary can save up to $100,000 in their ABLE account, and they can use those monies as they choose best meet their needs. And we have seen situations, even here in New York State, where someone has done the best planning they could put forward, and the person has a trust and a family member is managing those monies. And when that individual passes away, the remaining funds may go to a family member who helps to manage as an administrator of that trust. And we have seen situations where we refer people to Disability Rights New York because that family member is not allowing access to those funds. They want to secure those funds as an inheritance in the future. So an ABLE account, we encourage, and this has really created an opportunity for parents, for school districts, for service providers to help individuals who have a disability to work to their fullest ability, but maybe more importantly, to learn money management skills so that instead of needing to spend down to maintain eligibility for things like SSI and different types of Medicaid, they can save monies. So I have a colleague here at ABLE NRC who has a nephew who has a disability. He lives in a group home. And prior group home staff, and I used to work in a group home here in New York State. Lori, you need to take this person out to the store. You need to spend their monies down because otherwise they will not continue to be eligible for SSI. And we were purchasing frivolous things that the person really didn't even need, but we needed to spend those monies down. Instead, those monies could be saved in an ABLE account. So my colleague, her nephew, instead of the group home staff spending down those dollars, has more than $25,000 saved in an ABLE account. So what does that mean? If Medicaid's not going to cover all the dental work, or they have difficulty finding a dental provider, or housing expenses are more than the community and that person's SSI benefit can afford, funds in that ABLE account can be used to pay for property taxes, rent, home improvement, home accessibility. It's always difficult to foresee, right, what we're going to need in the future. And we're seeing storms that we've never seen before in New York State. A person might need a generator for their home. An ABLE account can allow for that, and a person can limit the monies going into their ABLE account so that when they do pass away, it will at least cover outstanding qualified disability expenses, including in funeral and burial. And then if Medicaid opts to step in and request repayment, then it's limited to what Medicaid has paid for since that person opened an ABLE account. But I urge all parents, service providers on today's session to help individuals learn money management skills. And at the ABLE NRC site, at the National Disability Institute site, we have many tools and resources to help family members, help individuals develop that skill set.
Sarah, Marcia, do you have anything to add about trusts?
The CDR Trust works with a lot of our members have ABLE accounts, so they are constantly putting in their limit for the year into there. And also being that we're a supplemental needs pooled trust, there's no payback to Medicaid. Any money left in a member's trust account when they're deceased is absorbed into the master trust so that we can continue providing our services to all the other individuals with disabilities in the trust.
Great.
We have individuals in our trust. We have over 70 individuals that are over 100 years old. Our oldest one is 117 right now. So they stay with us for a while.
Great.
That's quite a feat, Marcia. We
Really?
have a
Wow.
similar population, and again, a big goal of our programs is to allow people to live independently in the community for as long as possible, and so that really allows people to do that. I guess I would just add kind of a clear, high-level description of what a pooled trust is. Specifically, a pooled trust is a financial tool that allows a person to protect their own money or third-party money, and it's going to be managed by a not-for-profit organization. And so this is a good option when you have someone who may need the support of a trustee to oversee the management of the funds. We also work, and I would stress to everyone on this call that it is not a question of having a special needs trust or an ABLE account. You should maximize all of these tools that you have available to you. We've hit on a few of these things, but there are things that the ABLE account can pay for that a pooled trust can't pay for, like housing for someone on SSI. So we use these tools as special needs trust administrators to maximize the services that a person can get. A pooled trust is, as James mentioned, best for cash-based assets most of the time. We certainly do take distributions from life insurance policies, distributions from retirement accounts, but we don't typically manage real property. So that's another key distinction. But again, a pooled trust is going to be a fit when you have a family that doesn't have an appropriate person to serve as trustee, that may be looking for that support, who wants to have family that want to be involved, but don't want to take on those legal responsibilities of serving as a trustee or being that main point of day-to-day management of the trust. Obviously, as we've talked about, it does work for someone who is over 65, who needs to make additions to a trust of their own money. And that's not just spend downs, that's any additions to that trust. So if you come into a windfall after you're 65, it's going to have to go into a pooled trust. If you have resources accruing in a bank account that you need to spend down, that would be an ABLE account or a pooled trust. So, you have options there. And then, of course, another reason a pooled trust might be a consideration is if you are looking for a professional administrator and perhaps the amount of money you're receiving doesn't warrant going to a bank or a financial institution that may have very significant minimums. Just to touch on the payback provision as well, as Rick mentioned, third-party money is not subject to Medicaid payback with a special needs trust. There's also no limit on how much you can put in it, and there's no limit on how much can be in the account. So that's also really important, as James mentioned, for that long-term estate planning. First party is going to be unique to each pooled trust. So Marcia mentioned kind of their policy. We have a similar policy for most of our self-settled pooled trusts. The money does not go to repay Medicaid. The money is retained by our nonprofit. Our nonprofit is the ARC of New York. So if you're familiar with your local ARC chapter, we grant those funds out to our ARC chapters around the state to provide for unfunded services. So they go directly back into local communities. They're used by, and that's important when you're talking to a pool trust to understand what do they do with any remainder funds. And we do have a program where if it is funded with greater than $250,000, so this would be larger windfalls, settlements, inheritances, we do look to repay the lien first. So we will reach out to Medicaid, see if we're able to repay the lien. If we are, then NYSERC would only retain 25% of what is left, and the remaining 75% after the lien is paid can go to other family members. And I think that is the case with ABLE accounts as well. Like if you can satisfy the lien and there's still money left over, you can name beneficiaries. Am I correct with that, Lori?
Correct.
So sometimes it doesn't always go back to the state, but most of the time, the people that we are working with, the lien that they have for Medicaid is significantly larger than what may be in the account. We really do work with them throughout their lifetime to help ensure that they use these funds and have the opportunity to benefit from them during their lifetime.
Sarah, I'm glad you mentioned families that don't have a trusted person to act as a trustee, because that does come up a lot where people feel uncomfortable. They don't want to take that role. And that would be a great reason to use a pool trust because of the track record of the entity in managing funds. And I often will do that for, there are many situations where you have family members spread all over the country who maybe are not really well connected. And if there's a windfall, there's a hesitancy to name somebody in the family as a trustee. So that's if you have particularly a non-for-profit like a CDR, NYSARC, where the funds are going to be going back to use for other disabled people in the community, that is a good selling point for the pool trust.
And it is also a common misconception that we are, as a nonprofit, managing the investments in the account. So I'll let Marcia speak to your structure, but we partner with a financial institution that's a corporate fiduciary that manages all of our investments. So you do receive the benefit of the day-to-day communication and management of that account from a nonprofit that specializes in working with people with disabilities, that understands the residential system, the benefit system, can connect them to different resources, and the financial management of a corporate financial institution. And so, those two things married together can make a pooled trust very attractive for a variety of these situations when you're looking for that professional trustee.
Yes, we have a professional trustee corporation as well.
If you have a parent walk into your office and just say, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start, what is the very first thing that you would tell them to do? I mean, I've heard guardianship, and I know that, and again, like I'm in the process of that and have guardianship over a couple of my children, but aside from guardianship, in terms of the financial planning piece, what is the very first thing that you would tell a parent to do? It sounds like it sounds like all of these, it sounds like all of these tools play different roles. So in a perfect world, we would have the majority, if not all of these tools in place over the course of time. What is the very first thing that you think a parent should do, or where should a parent start if they really have no idea where to start with this when their child is 18?
So from my perspective, I would focus on maximizing all available benefits and services. So in New York State, we have a lot. We have more than almost every other state out there. So everything from SNAP to SSI to CDPAP to self-direction to housing subsidies to, you know, family reimbursed respite to HEAP to, you know, they just go on and on. But that's often where you start, because you can look to then create perhaps cash and or offset costs of, you know, I have 3 children and that gives me anxiety, let alone 21, right? So, you know, that's where we start. And once you then interface with some of these benefits, then it's much easier to have an informed conversation about all these vehicles, which at their core are designed to preserve eligibility for those benefits. So sometimes putting the cart before the horse, you know, for example, if someone does not meet the Social Security definition of disability, is under Medicaid through the New York State Health Insurance Exchange, and it's not financially means tested, they may not A, be able to enroll in a pooled trust, and B, may not benefit from some of these same strategies versus some of your children, more medically complex, intellectual disabilities, it's a whole different spot. So often starting on the benefit side, it kind of starts giving you a direction, and then it's easier to talk about the legal piece. Then ultimately, what's the longer term plan? And then once you have the longer term plan figured out, it's easier to back into what are we going to do between now and then with respect to housing and so forth. But I think you can talk about benefits, you can talk about work supports, you can talk about care needs after working through, you know, what's out there for my specific situation. So that's
Yeah.
how we look at it.
Ideally, ideally at the meeting, you would have all of us available at the first meeting so you can talk to us. But it is overly complicated, and but that's how it is. So if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I say, slow down. What is the first thing you want to accomplish? What are your concerns? What are your worries? And then start slowly getting them up to speed on the vehicles that are available to the parents to try to protect their son or daughter going forward, not only during their lifetime, but after they pass away. We haven't talked about wills. Wills are very, very important to have an estate plan in place so that if something happens and, you know, lawyers think worst case scenarios, both parents are in a plane that goes down, what's going to happen? Who's going to be there to act as a caregiver, guardian for the son or daughter? What are the financial protections in place? Typically, we'll have a trust under the will that's established. So I try to take it slow and start, you know, put down that cup of coffee. Let's have a nice conversation and then ramp up, because if you try to throw everything at a client at an initial meeting, it's going to be information overload. The benefits, James, that's a great place to start. You know, let's put the structure in place and then talk about, there's an ABLE account, there's a self-settled trust, there's a third-party trust, there's SSI, SSD. Get them educated on what is available and how to maximize those benefits going forward. Again, not only during their lifetime, but making sure everything is taken care of after they pass away.
You know, you just made me, another question that we get asked all the time is, if my child is disabled, why am I applying for SSI versus SSDI? Can anybody give kind of a brief what the difference is and
I think you can do
Work
that.
record.
So SSI is a program for individuals that meet the Social Security definition of disability, but lack their own work history. They've not obtained the appropriate number of working credits with Social Security, which is a prorated amount, which is beyond the scope of today's conversation. Social Security disability benefits is the benefit that you pay in via the FICA tax. So every quarter you work, or really there's a certain dollar amount, you build up credits. Not to be confused with childhood disability benefits, Title II of the Social Security Act, which covers benefits off of a parent, which includes an adoptive parent. And at the point where a parent is either deceased, filing for disability benefits themselves, or has reached the age of filing for their own Social Security benefit, a child could be eligible off of their record as long as they have not earned over substantial gainful activity in many cases are unmarried, although not always, um, and the disability onset date is before 22. So SSI, no work history. SSD, folks that have a work history, childhood disability benefits, um, may have or have not had a work history, but are eligible off of a parent's record.
And don't have to have a work history to get child disability benefits.
Correct. They do not. But if they do, um, they are paid first a benefit on their own, and then the difference off of the parent, subject to something called a family maximum. But Sarah, that's a great point.
So I think in this dialogue, I would like to emphasize again, systems are changing all the time, right? And we know that many of these benefits are on the table to be cut. We need to encourage our school systems, transition services, parents, and all providers to view that individual's employment ability and to ensure that they secure employment in their community and that they are working to their fullest ability. So I'm a benefits advisor here in New York State, and the Department of Labor works side by side with Access VR, helping people to secure integrated competitive employment, that people are getting paid a living wage and working to their fullest ability. Many people retain benefits even though they're earning more than SGA, and being able to save. And when they take a disbursement from their ABLE account, if they use that account as a retirement account, that is not countable income when those monies are withdrawn to pay for qualified disability expenses. However, a person who saves in a 403B, a 401K, when they take a disbursement, that is countable income that will impact means-tested benefits like HUD, SNAP, even the Medicare premium, for example. So encourage employment and the development of financial literacy skills and put together that financial plan with a special needs specialist to be able to ensure your family members' success and financial well-being. That's great.
Lori, that sounds like good final thoughts, but does anybody else have anything they would like to add? We are at 12 o'clock right now.
Only thing I would add is, learning the world of benefits, trusts, able accounts, et cetera, is literally as complicated as learning a foreign language. You have to just do it through repetitive seminars, webinars, to the extent you can hiring someone to guide you, but there's a lot of resources out there. But you also want to ask good questions and be thoughtful about where is this person coming from. So for example, we've got an individual from a national organization that's clearly very aware of New York, but if you talk to a Social Security Administration official, they're a federal employee. They don't know anything about our state benefits, sometimes vice versa. Different pooled trust administrators may have different policies, may have different internal procedures for reviewing disability requests. So it's all, different attorneys have different experience. In this case, Rick was the former Monroe County Medicaid attorney. So that's useful knowledge to ask him, what is your experience? So I think it's okay to ask tough questions, but just like you can't learn to ride a bike at a seminar, we can't make you experts on all of these topics in a 1 hour session. It's going to take, I've been at this for 20 years and I'm still learning. I just learned about the ABLE account with the court order of child support. That makes me so happy. So thank you, ladies. So I think that's just the takeaway. Keep at it. And just when you think you figured it out, they'll change the rules. So you just got to keep at it forever.
Yeah, I would just follow that up with I like how Rick and James, you guys focus on priorities and really identifying the needs of the individual when you're thinking about starting these conversations. And one of the things that we're always telling families is that we are one piece of a very big puzzle. None of us can be experts in all of these things, as much as it's going to be hard for you to become experts in all of these areas. We each specialize in these areas for a reason. I've learned a ton on this call. Thank you guys so much. And so, having a team in place, working with your family supports, pulling together who is your resources. When someone comes into our office, often it's because there's a specific need financially regarding a need to protect benefits. But getting those benefits in place first, maximizing those, then worrying about protecting benefits and making sure that you are speaking with a qualified elder law special needs attorney, speaking with your financial advisor, counseling with an ABLE account, counseling with a special needs trust administrator. All of these different organizations are going to help you be able to answer these questions, but you're not going to be able to go to there's unfortunately no one-stop shop for all of this information.
And my final thought is really briefly, be thankful that we live in the state of New York. We're second only to California in its generosity in terms of the Medicaid program. Many states have resource limits for Medicaid of $2,000. We're at a little over $32,000. We have a very generous public benefit system here in New York, and let's hope it stays that way. There are unfortunately changes coming, but we'll do our best to stay on top of that and provide quality, dignified services to our clients.
Nice to meet you all today. Thank you for sharing.
I want to thank Lori, James, Rick, Sarah, and Marcia for all your wonderful information. If you have any additional resources that you'd like to share with me, you have my email address and we can send that out to the attendees. And again, I'm thankful that we have such great resources in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.